Hey, what's up guys? I'm Ryan and welcome back to another tutorial, and today we're doing another screen replacement on an iPhone. And screen replacements are something I get a lot from a lot of clients, and every one of them kind of has something different to do and something to learn from. So today we're talking about this footage where, let me go ahead and transition over so you can see it. Today we're talking about this footage where we start off with a blank iPhone screen and there's nothing on it. And the thing that I kind of like about this, and I actually recommend to a lot of clients, is I prefer tracking just the black screen. And the reason that is because it gives us some opportunities to add these natural reflections back in over our composition. So let's see here. Let's get right here, kind of in this area. And what's nice is we can add the reflections back on top of the screen we're going to replace. So we kind of get those blues, we get the reflections. So yeah, we're going to kind of do that today. So let me close this all up and I'll kind of get us started here. So let's take our race car footage, drag it into new composition, and let's go ahead and start tracking this. We're only going to need out to about this little natural lens flare hits. So I might just break up the footage right there. And let's go up to animation, track, and Mocha and start going. And what they did is they made a phone call. The phone vibrates. It hits this lever, drops the flag, and lets the race car know that it's ready to take off. So they actually did call this cell phone. It's a little dark to see right now. So let's just go ahead and start cranking up the brightness so we can actually see when this phone call starts. All right, cool. And so I'm just going to start with a regular X-spline for now. And I'm just going to do the outside of our phone. Now, when the phone kind of lands and starts shaking after it falls, we might have to do a little bit of manual tracking there, but I'll show you how I like to approach that here in just a second. So I might actually just grab all these points, make them straight. And let's get the perspective in there, and let's just go ahead and use 90% of minimum pixels there. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and start tracking backwards, and we'll come back and track forwards. All right, so we're back. This is still tracking a little bit, but we're starting to get at that point where it's going to hit the ground and start to get a little squirrely. So let me just turn this down a little bit, and let's keep tracking forward and see how far our tracking is off. I might add a little grid just so we can look at it here. I might just turn that back off real quick just so we can see it a little bit better. All right, it's starting to fall. Let's see how far our tracking gets off. We are fighting with the reflections a little bit now. All right, cool. So we kind of get to right about here, and our corner's sort of falling off right there. So let's go ahead and let's just add a keyframe here because this is all good up until there. And let's just track forward one frame. And what I'm going to do is just kind of refine this frame by frame here. And I'll go back to auto tracking. I'll just kind of adjust it frame by frame here. And let's see what this looks like. So we're kind of slipping a little bit. And I'm just adjusting the track each time. We want to keep everything on the same plane. So if we kind of start tracking underneath the phone, it's a little bit of a different plane. So it might give us an incorrect track. So again, I'm just going to keep refining this frame by frame, and let me do this and we'll come right back. All right, so I'm kind of getting to the point where the shaking stopped after it hit, and we might be able to start getting some auto tracking again. And let me go ahead and get a little bit of our screen in there a little bit more. And let's just click, instead of one frame, let's do the whole thing here. And I'm just going to kind of adjust this as we go. And the reflections that are going to kind of mess up our track should be coming in here pretty soon. All right, so as you can see, it's kind of shifting over because this reflection is sort of screwing us up a little bit. What we're going to do is, since this is only a couple of frames, we're going to have to manually adjust this track anyways. So I'm going to keep going forward and just kind of keeping the surface of the cell phone in our track area here. Making sure to focus just on the screen still, even though it's a little bit of motion blur, a little bit of crazy. I'm going to go ahead and track back a couple frames on this. All right, so I'm going to click forward here to get to our last keyframe. And again, we're going to adjust this. It's a little wonky, but that's all right. Let's go ahead and track forward to see what happens. Yeah, it's just going to keep sliding off the screen here. So I'm just going to manually adjust this, keeping this in frame, and we'll come right back. All right, cool. So all I did was just manually add some more keyframes in there. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll use our corner pinning to adjust that a little bit. So let's go ahead and get kind of to where it was looking all right. So let's get this back in the middle of the screen here. All right, so I'm gonna turn the brightness back up so we can kind of get an idea of where our screen and our corner pin is supposed to be. So let's turn on our corner pinning here. It's gonna be a little wonky, and I'll start setting these in the corner. I like going a little outside of where the actual screen is. So let me zoom in on this one. All right, cool. I'm just lining up the edges, making sure that looks nice. And real quick, let's just throw in a grid. And I'm going to play this back since we know the back isn't too bad, and we'll just see what it looks like. So, that's the easy part. It's ping-ponging back. So let's go ahead and see when we start to lose it a little bit. All right, so that's sticking on there all pretty well. And right when the motion blur starts kicking, we probably have some issues. So let's go ahead. I'm going to set the grid back to none. And let's sort of start adjusting this manually. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back a frame here where we're still locked on pretty well. I'm going to open up the Adjust Track tab here, and it's going to set a keyframe automatically for my corner pins. And let's go forward one frame and kind of make sure these are back in the corner where we want them. And this is just going to get progressively worse, but we'll just deal with it as it comes. All right, cool. So I'm sort of just adjusting these frame by frame. I'm just scrolling up and down with my mouse wheel to kind of go frame by frame and make sure that we're still staying in the corners. Now, when we get inside of After Effects, we'll add some motion blur and we'll kind of be able to hide some of this stuff. But I'm just kind of showing you, some things that can happen when you're working with this. And, it's not the prettiest workaround. And, if anyone from Mocha is watching this, they'll probably rip me apart. But hey, yeah, we'll get it to work in the end, and it'll be pretty seamless. So I'm going to just go ahead and I'll do this a couple more times. I'm just going to scroll up, and I'm just adjusting each of these points to kind of match to the corners as much as I can, even with all this motion blur. I'm just sort of guessing right now because there is a point where it settles and, kind of goes off screen where it's nice and flat. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep doing this. And instead of boring you guys, I'll go ahead and fast forward this, but just know that this is all I'm doing the whole time. I'm just kind of doing a best guess with those corners since I can't really see where they are. And I'm just manually adjusting that frame by frame. And there's only a few frames, so it won't take too long, but I will come back when I'm all done with this. All right, guys, so despite everything, despite all the reflections, let's go ahead and turn this off. Let's just add a grid in here real quick and see how we're doing. All right, so despite everything, we kind of got a decent track going on. So let's go ahead and move this in After Effects and kind of get to the whole point of this tutorial of showing you how you can use a blank iPhone or iPad screen to comp the reflections back into your composite there, into your track. So let's go ahead and export the tracking data. Going to do some corner pin here, and we'll do this, supports motion blur. Let's copy that. Jump in After Effects, and let's go ahead and go to the first frame here. And I'm going to make a new composition. This will be our iPhone screen. And I'm going to go ahead and bring the iPhone screen over our footage. And I'm going to do paste and get all the keyframe data inside of there. Cool. All right, so let's start adding stuff into our cell phone screen. All right, so here we're inside our iPhone screen, and I have this footage that's already, in the resolution that we need from an iPhone. So I'll just go ahead and drop that in our composition. And here's the tricky part again that we talked about in another Mocha tutorial is my final composition is 1920 by 1080. So I have to make sure this phone footage, even though this is the correct resolution, I have to stretch it to match our 1920 by 1080 composition. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to start sort of giving this a little bit of imperfections so we can start, kind of faking this and making it look like it's in our original cell phone. So you've seen me use this technique 100 times, but let's do it anyways. We're going to give it a chromatic aberration effect. So I'll just go ahead and grab a set channels. And let's just turn all, the blue and the green off. We have red now. Duplicate the footage. I'll take the top layer, reset it, and turn off just the red channel. And I'll set it to add. All right, so now we're back to our regular color channels. I'll take the scale, the bottom one, and I'm just going to scale it up just a little bit till we get a little bit of that color separation. And the only thing I'll do next is let me go ahead and close all those windows. Let's get back to our composition here. And I might add some finger smudges. And if you have an actual image of finger smudge, that's going to look the best. As of right now, I don't have that. So let's just go ahead and fake it with optical flares. Let's add some optical flares here. And I'm just going to clear all this. Let's go with spastic. All right, so spastic, and let's turn the brightness up so we can all see what we're working with here. All right, let's turn up the brightness. We've got a little bit of those fingerprint smudges in there. I'll just make it really bright right now so we can see it, and we'll adjust it here in a little bit. And let's not forget that we need to adjust for scaling. So if we go back out here, it's kind of stretched from the top here. So let's go ahead and let's grab my scale. I'm just going to stretch it out this way and see what that looks sort of normal. All right, it's still a little. Let's go a little wider. All right, cool. So we're getting there. And I'm just kind of refining this. And now let's just kind of find a section that we like. This has a little bit less of the big ones all in the same spot. I'm just going to screen this over on top of everything here. And it's really subtle, but it's there. So let's go ahead and just tone it down a little bit. We don't want to go too crazy. And let's look at that back out here now. All right, cool. So we got our footage in there. We replaced it on top. Now let's go ahead and sort of, let's match this into the scene a little bit more before we start adding reflections. So let's go ahead and grab levels on this. And let's give it a little bit of just a little bit of a blur to sort of match the little bit of depth of field we have going on there. Like a 0.3 is okay. You've probably already seen this if you saw the other screen tutorial, but I'm just going to sort of go through the color channels here and make sure our levels are sort of matching. So I'm going to bring up the blacks a little bit. Maybe the whites a little bit. Check out what our green and blue looks like. So I'm just sort of kind of gradually looking over everything in a way that it's sort of, we want it to kind of just blend together. We want it to all sort of look like it all matches. All right, so that's not too bad. So there we go. Cell phone's looking like it's in the scene a little bit more. Let's just turn those off and look. A little blur there. Awesome. And another thing I'll do is I'll match the grain of our footage. Our noise source is the race car layer. Let's go ahead and look at the final output. All right, cool. So there we go. We're getting it. Let's go ahead and maybe we don't need as much. It's a little large as well. So I'm going to make the size half of this. And that's looking pretty good. So match grain kind of slows things down a little bit. So let's just turn that off and just kind of see what this looks like so far. All right, so we want to match that motion blur. Let's so it's turned on there. Let's turn on for the comp. All right, so there we go. We're getting it. All right, one thing the footage was kind of doing is it was needing to fade out a little bit here. So, I mean, the phone doesn't need to be so bright. This will hide some of our bad tracking here. But maybe on the way down, it just fades out just a little bit. And since we're on black, it'll kind of give us that natural little darkening. So I might bring it down just a little bit between those 2 points. That little bit of fading helps with our reflections a little bit. Maybe we won't go so dark. Let's see what it looks like going off to the side. Cool. And that's pretty much the end of the shot right there. So now the crux of what the whole point of this tutorial has been, we're finally getting to it, is adding reflections back in since we have that nice, clean reflection plate from our natural footage. So easy way to do that is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this footage. All these effects, we want to keep the corner pin, but we don't need these. They'll just slow down our composition. So let's solo this. Let's switch it over and let's make it an alpha matte since we have the alpha of our track. And what I'm going to do is just sort of switch through my blending modes here until I find a mode that I like. Let's see, and what's that? That's add. Add's always nice. And maybe I'll just tone it down just a little bit here. But what that does is it kind of, it's a little bright right there. Let's go ahead and adjust our levels real quick just because it's a little too bright right there. Got our reflections back in there. Let's put our add, and we're having a little bit of the white of the phone show up back there. So let's go ahead and again, I'm just gonna add another levels. I'm gonna bring down the whites a little bit just so we don't see these actual phone numbers back there from the original footage. So I'm just gonna bring the whites down a little bit, crank up the darks a little bit. So now we still have those reflections in there, which look nice, but we just don't have that hot white part. So let's see what it looks like when it drops down. Awesome. So yeah, those are all from the original footage. And this is just kind of to taste however you want to mix it in from here. So let's go ahead and just drop it down the opacity a little bit. All right, and it goes off screen. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna RAM preview this and we'll see how we did. Let's go ahead, I'm gonna turn on the match grain again just to get everything to blend in a little bit more, and let's take a look at that. All right, cool. So the only thing I would say is our smudge layer turned more into a little bit of a circle here. So just real quick, let's switch this back to something that has a little bit more detail on it. Ooh, maybe not that much. And let's just go back to good old smudgy. All right, cool. So smudge looks great. Yeah, those large dots were just a little too distracting. I might even bring it down just, oh, so subtle. We don't want to overdo it. And that'll just help it a little bit more. All right, and there we go, guys. There's our plate Compton with a little bit of visual effects, a little bit of motion tracking. We replaced it with our phone call footage, and no one is the wiser. And there we go, guys. Got a little bit of a hard track there at the end, fighting those reflections. But if you kind of manually add those corner pins to where your cell phone footage is supposed to be, you should be good to go. If anyone has any tips on that for me and how they would approach getting around those reflections, definitely let me know. But ultimately, I hope showing that if you track a cell phone with, just on black without any tracking markers or anything, you can add those natural reflections back in and it can really sell any screen replacements that you have. So again, hopes that helps. I hope that helps. So I hope that helps you guys out. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I just want to say thanks to all the people out there giving, positive comments and asking great questions. And, I'll get to it all soon. You guys have asked for a few things. I'll get to that as well. And yeah, we'll just keep going, keep having fun, learning new stuff. And thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. We 3D tracked it, and we have some Z space going on, and it just looks pretty cool. We're gonna have our beams follow it no matter where we reposition it.